We've been fighting a long time, and we have all lost so very much, so many loved ones gone. But you are not alone. There are pockets of resistance all around the planet. We are at the brink.
Hey, what's going on, everybody? It is that time of the week. It's time for your weekly SITREP update. It is March 22nd, 2022. I'm Aaron Sampson. I'm here with my buddy. What's going on, Daniel? Daniel Stevens. I was going to say discipleship dialogues because it's on your little thing down there. But
yeah. That's funny.
How's it going, brother?
Oh, we're hanging in there. Back through it.
It's been rough. I know those of you guys that are still sticking around and hanging around, we had to take a couple weeks off because it's just been nonstop. It's been one thing after another, hasn't it?
Something like that.
Yeah,
for sure.
I know from our end, like my wife broke her foot, but both the girls got sick with salmonella. And then I got sick with, I think, salmonella because I was still working on the chicken coop. Finally got it moved and everything. And then now both the girls have sniffles, and it's just been one thing after another. And you've been dealing with some stuff too, right?
Oh, yeah, just this and that, and get the little one home, and then the other one gets admitted to the hospital, and just it's kind of a whirlwind for a little bit there, and now just trying to catch your breath a little bit now. So, yeah.
We made it through. We weathered the storm. Yeah, and you guys were looking at possibly moving too in that time period. So it was a lot going on for you guys.
I had to put that one on the back burner just because of everything else that was going on, and that's a pretty big important one. So hopefully all that shakes out the way it's supposed to.
Yeah, and I thought it will. It's one of those things, like we go through these times of trials and tribulations and things, and they seem really dark and bleak at the time, but when you get to the other side, it's almost like a forethought. It's like, yeah, it was rough, but the miracles and things that I've ever encountered when I go through a rough situation far outweigh the troubles and struggles that you got to get to that point. So that's what we keep faith in, right? We keep in belief that there's always a light at the end of that tunnel.
Right.
Yep. Go ahead.
Absolutely. No, you pretty much nailed it.
All right. Well, tonight we titled the show as Speak Life, and it's a title or a topic we've kind of hit on a lot, especially with social media and the way that we kind of handle each other and talk to each other, even through social media and stuff like that. We're gonna talk and touch about what the Bible says about our tongue, how we use our mouth, how our tongue is a rudder for our life, and how that not only affects other people, and how we are called to speak to other people and say things, but also say things about our own lives, and to talk about blessings and curses we can bring into our own lives. And we've kind of, from time to time, we've hit on this kind of thing when we've talked about social media, and we've talked about different circumstances with what we say about our children or what we say about ourselves. But I think tonight we just want to compile that and kind of talk deep into that. And with everybody in the chat, hopefully they can contribute a little bit too. It's good to see you guys. If you guys are just listening or just tuning in, make sure you guys jump in the chat and the live chat and say hi. We can see I got to see Ark's in there, our brother Ian Chadrick's in there, Gina Knowles, Edward, Janet, Kelly. Yeah, it's good to see you guys. So we'll try to shout out. Roger, hey, what's up, Roger? He's tuning in too. So it's good to see. We take a couple weeks off, but everybody's back, and hopefully you guys enjoy this show tonight, and hopefully it speaks to you. It speaks to your heart, it speaks to your spirit, and then we're gonna delve into scriptures and see what the text says about what we should be doing with our mouths and with our tongue, and how we should be handling things. What do you think? Anything come right off the chest, right off the cuff?
No, let's get into it.
All right. One of the things that we've kind of talked about this kind of aspect. We'll kind of talk about like how the different aspects of this. And I think one of the most pertinent ones that I see, especially amongst brothers and sisters right now in this community, is how we handle and talk to each other in social media. And, even though we say tongue, it's about speaking these blessings and curses into our reality. Once if it's a thought, that's one thing, right? You can think things, but there's something that happens when you take that from a thought inside of your brain and then you speak it out into this reality. And I think that also carries over to how we talk to each other and how you write things out, right? The Bible is a living document. It is forever meaningful because of the words that are written into that, because of the experiences. There's a living function of this reality that Bible represents. And I think the same thing carries over. And you see this a lot in the occult. They believe that, if they put things down, they scribe things, they write things, they become part of this reality and they become curses or, whatever they want to call them. And I think that same thing is in the way that we deal with things, the way we handle things on social media. There's a lot of stuff I see on a daily basis. And actually I've been trying to pull away from social media. But when I do get on there and see a lot of things that are said between believers and between people, and even for people that aren't believers who are observing, it doesn't look very fruit-like, it doesn't look very Christ-like with some of the things that are being said and spoken and some of the ways that people are saying things and the intent behind what is being said. So do you see that same kind of thing? Do you believe that the same rules apply when it comes to what we write and the intent behind it is the same as if we speak it out loud?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot to that, and the fact that, as we have these things in our heart, out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks, right? So if we're having these struggles with heart problems, we're going to have mouth problems. I think that's kind of what it boils down to.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, I think the real essence of it does boil down to heart issues. If you're having trouble with brothers and sisters and things like that, I think the scriptures are pretty, sometimes the old adage, right? If you don't have anything nice to say, don't say it at all. Like that goes a long way. And I think that Paul and several of the other disciples in the New Testament spoke on this. And I think Daniel references this a lot too in Psalms. If you're not going to say something nice or you don't have anything meaningful to say, then like keep your mouth shut. It's kind of the way that they put it. And, there's some relevant text about that, but we also do see a lot of talk about how the tongue in itself, it can be a weapon, how it can be venomous, how it can be like a serpent's, like a viper's teeth and all kinds of stuff. And so I think we should be really cautious and careful about the way that we say things and who we say things to and how we say things. Because something that can be said, even from a Christian aspect, right? When you're talking about a circumstance with another brother and sister about another brother or sister, that can, depending on how the heart issue is behind that, how does that, I mean, it's almost like a really thin line to when that changes over from just discussing a topic with somebody that you trust or that you're looking for advice to gossip, right? Where that can almost be detrimental of how you're speaking about that person to another person. And that's something we have to watch out for as well when just dealing with this brother and sister thing and then working with another brother and sister. Do you see that too?
Yeah, for sure.
Let's pull up a couple of the scriptures real quick that are kind of relevant here. You want to pull up the software, or do you want me to just read it off?
If you want to just read it off, that's fine.
Okay. Let's just if you guys want to follow along, we're just going to jump around to a couple different ones and to just kind of pull them here in context here. James talks a lot about the tongue. James 3, we'll go ahead and start from James 3:1. All right, it says, "Not many of you should become teachers, my fellow believers, because you know that we who teach will be judged more strictly. This is to me is pertinent 100% to like social media, right? There's a lot of people out there who are claiming to be teachers and trying to teach people, but the heart behind it is not beneficial. It doesn't have the love, and it ends up coming off more stern and strict and abusive than it does coming off as a teaching moment or as a learning moment for someone.
Sure.
We all stumble in many ways. Anyone who is never at fault in what they say is perfect. I'm completely messed up. We all stumble in many ways. Anyone who is never at fault in what they say is perfect, able to keep their whole body in check. Man, that was weird with that comma there. When we put bits into the mouth of a horse to make them obey us, we can turn the whole animal. Or take ships as an example. Although they are large and driven by strong winds, they are steered by a very small rudder wherever the pilot wants them to go. Likewise, the tongue is a small part of the body, but makes great boasts. Consider what a great forest is set on fire by a small spark. The tongue is also a fire, a world of evil among the parts of the body. It corrupts the whole body, sets the whole course of one's life on fire, and itself set on fire by hell. Okay, I don't know if we go any further with that. Yeah, okay, well, just read a little bit more. All kinds of animals, birds, reptiles, sea creatures are being tamed and have been tamed by mankind. But no human can tame the tongue. It is a restless evil full of deadly poison. With the tongue we praise our Lord and Father, and with it we curse human beings who have been made in God's likeness. Out of the same mouth comes praises and curses. My brothers and sisters, this should not be. Can both fresh water and salt water flow from the same spring? My brothers and sisters, can a fig tree bear olives or a grapevine bear figs? Neither can a salt spring produce fresh water. Who is wise and understanding among you? Let them show it by their good life, by deeds done in the humanity that comes from wisdom. So, I mean, that's got a lot to it. But the comparisons that he says, I mean, again, we see the same thing, like a olive tree can't produce, figs, and a fig vine can't produce olives. It is along the same lines as what we see with a bad tree cannot produce good fruit, and a good tree cannot produce bad fruit. So this same kind of understanding from my perspective, right, from a discernment perspective. A person who's claiming to be a Christian but is harsh and abrasive in their words, even on social media, that should be a red flag on, maybe I shouldn't be checking this, like taking doctrinal advice from this person. It doesn't mean we have to bury them, right? We don't have to kill them in our hearts, but maybe we should be praying for them. Maybe we should be, if you're close to that person, right, maybe you should be sitting them down and saying, hey, what's going on with you? Where are you hurt? Show me on this doll where this person, hurt you, or where the church hurt you, or whatever it is, right? There seems to be one of the biggest things that I see when we're dealing with this spectrum is there's damage, trauma, hurt, pain that comes from, and this is a retaliatory activity that people are working in, and they're using their tongue to lash back, to be violent, in a space where there's anonymity, and they have, there's no threat of somebody coming and punching them in the face, right? So it's like this free space for vengeance on whoever gets in your way or steps on your toes. And again, this boils down to the heart issue, right?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, there's quite a bit that you touched on there. I mean, there's the times that we see the most hurt is when we experience and put out the most hurt is when we're hurt ourselves, and when there's that that trauma and whatnot, and hurt people type of mentality, and it's just really strange sometimes to see how, or not strange, but it's interesting to see how often that is like the basis of where someone's at and where they're struggling. It's just they have some type of that hurt that they're trying to get through, and a lot of times it comes across as just a cry for help type of thing to try and expose what they've experienced and whatnot. So yeah, I mean, it's just think about what you say before you say it, because there's that I'm trying to remember the exact the phrase, but it just like if you that the knee jerk reactions, that what you spit out without even thinking about it is going to be a lot of times the most brutal, honest truth of what's inside. So that's what we see a lot of times, especially in those tough situations.
Yeah. A big shout out to West Blaze Music in the house. He says Happy New Year, guys, to all those that are following the calendars. This is this would be the the I don't know how would you say it is not Israeli New Year, but like the Hebrew New Year. There we go. Yeah, I guess that's today, right?
The head of the year.
Happy New Year.
Is it technically Rosh Hashanah? Huh? Is that the head of the year?
That's the Jewish New Year's in the fall, but the actual like Hebrew calendar New Year's actually starts in April. So
right. I just didn't know. I mean, would it be Rosh Hashanah on the Hebrew calendar as opposed to like the Jewish calendar?
I mean, we just had Purim, so I don't. What's the next one? I'm gonna get West Blaze in here to jump in and
straighten us all out on our calendar.
Right. He's got a cool little thing that he put up where they went off of the what calendar was it? Where you at, West Blaze? The head of the year and the day of remembrance. Okay, is what he said in the chat.
The head of the year, yeah.
Yeah. So, not to get too far astray from what you were saying, I just wanted to say that. But yeah, you hit a great point too, and I think we saw this with the Pharisees and Sadducees a lot too, like the rebuttals and the way that they attacked back. It sometimes we think we're doing a good thing, right? Like
Sure.
I know back when I used to debate all the time on social media. You're trying to teach somebody, they're going to learn today, right? But in that though, sometimes people will say something on one side or the other, or especially on social media, it's so difficult to express emotion, sarcasm, things like that. And sometimes somebody will say something and you'll take offense to it. And then your retaliation is a hurtful retaliation. And that original person may not have even meant it to be. I think it's almost more detrimental in the social media sphere, because I know there's times when people have gotten offended by something I said and I didn't mean it in a manner that was disrespectful. And then there's other times when I meant to be sarcastic and it came across as literal, so
right.
It's very difficult in that sphere. So this is another reason why we should be taking every thought captive when we're going through and we're having these conversations and having these discussions, is how is this person going to perceive what I'm saying? And
Sure.
this again, I think all of these discussions, especially biblical topics, especially confrontation, prayer, deliverance, all those things need to be led with the Holy Spirit rather than led by the self, because we can get lost in a lot of different things, trying to chase our own, views on things. The Holy Spirit doesn't have rose-colored lenses when it comes to a person's life, right? We do. We approach every topic with our own experience at hand, and
Sure.
it sometimes maybe it needs to be one of those things like, should I respond to this, and then ask the Holy Spirit, should I respond to this? And then listen, before we speak those things, because you said that knee-jerk reaction thing. I've done that many times. I
think we all have.
that
I don't think
knee-jerk
that's just
reaction of
you.
Uzzah, right? Like, but now we have to take it from a perspective that if my words could kill somebody, would I say this thing? Would I damage, if I, because Jesus viewed it as that. I don't have the exact scripture pulled up in front of me, but he says, if you speak, actually, maybe it'd probably be pertinent if I did pull that up. Do you remember where that's at, where he talks about if you lust after the, the eyes, and then, I'll just look it up real quick.
Yeah, I'm not remembering the exact, I'm sure it's in Matthew.
It's going to take me a second. I wasn't exactly ready to pull that up, but I'm sure everybody knows what I'm talking about. I don't have that exact passage, but where he's talking about, if you lust after a woman with your eyes, then you've already committed adultery in your heart. And if you speak slanderous things about a person, then you've already murdered them in your heart. So, maybe it's time that we kind of look at the things that we say, is this a knife that's digging into somebody, versus, just a flippant word that we say, or a paragraph that we put on Facebook. I think looking at it as this has the potential to damage a brother or sister that we're going to be held accountable for, in that mindset, if we take a second just to think, would the Holy Spirit say this? Does the Holy Spirit want me to say this? Or could this possibly be misinterpreted, misconstrued, and be damaging to a person? I think is very important thing to look at.
Sure.
Let's see. Anybody else pop in I wanted to say hi to? Oh, we got a couple new. Eric popped in here. Rachel's in here. Cool. All right, we're totally not prepared for this. we were like, oh, are we doing a show tonight? Yeah, we probably should do a show tonight. I know you're tired, and I just, man, it's been one of those weeks.
Yep. Let's see if I can find the right one.
Let me make sure this is. I didn't even get to do this when I came up. Let me make sure this comes up here. There we go. Okay, we're good. Let me back up here a little bit here. One of the other passages that I had looked up was Proverbs 15:4. We're talking about just the tongue in general. It says, the soothing tongue is a tree of life, but a preserving tongue crushes the spirit. Or a perverse tongue crushes the spirit. Man, I just cannot even read today. Another version says, a gentle tongue is a tree of life, but perverseness in it breaks the spirit. I think that's important there.
It's Matthew 5.
Matthew 5. Let's go ahead and pull that up. You want to go ahead and read it? Let's read that.
Yeah.
Read those red letter words.
Why is this not working? My computer does not like me today. All right. Starts in verse 27 of Matthew 5. You've heard that it was said, do not commit adultery, but I tell you, anyone who looks at a woman to lust after her has already committed adultery with her in his heart. If your right eye causes you to sin, gouge it out and throw it away. It is better for you to lose one part of your body than for your whole body to be thrown into Sheol, or Gehenna. And if your right hand causes you to sin, cut it off and throw it away. It's better for you to like, I just totally literally repeats himself, like almost verbatim twice in a row. He's like, I'm telling you, this is important. Listen to what I'm saying. Like, this is going to be something a lot of you guys struggle with. So, yeah.
Yeah, one of the other things that I saw from like Daniel, or was it? The Psalms 64. 64. Let's just see what he said. This is David. That's what it was saying. 64:2 says, "Hide me from the conspiracies of the wicked, from the plots of evildoers. They sharpen their tongues like swords and aim cruel words like deadly arrows. They shoot from ambushes at the innocent, and they shoot suddenly without fear. They encourage each other in evil plans, and they talk about hiding their snares. They say, who will see them?" But again, it's like weapons of war. They sharpen their tongues like swords and aim cruel words like deadly arrows. And I've literally seen that, where it's like, you're trying to do damage. And anybody that's been in I used to be really bad about trying to, in arguments with my wife or even in previous relationships. Like, if you ever said anything hypocritical, right? Like, you wanted to come at me with, well, you didn't do this. I would have a litany of all of the times that you did something very similar, and it was like a full salvo of like, just like, let me start launching off and tearing you down because, how dare you approach me and attack me about a topic that you were doing the same thing, the hypocriticalness of that. But in that action though, it was very damaging. It's like shooting arrows, like this says. It can be very, very damaging to people. And I've known and dealt with a lot of people. How many times, like versus just two topics, right? Like, can you think back in your life when you've gotten into a fight and somebody punched you really solid and you're like, that was a good time. Like that, that person got me good, right? Like I've been in lots of fights in my life, and there were few of them that I have like the mental, like, oh, I can remember every detail of it or whatever. You know what I'm saying? Like, do you ever had like that kind of thing? Can you pull one? Cause I when I think back, I'm like, they're all kind of blurry or whatever, but I can remember a time when somebody said something to me and it hurt me worse than being in a fight and being punched. You know what I mean? It's almost more damaging than being, in a physical fight with someone. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I've been in a few too many physical fights, and I remember some of those punches hurt pretty bad. So, yeah, it's different though, especially when it's something that you hold really, near and dear, and those emotional wounds are sometimes the hardest to let go of. Like once your nose stops bleeding, it's pretty easy to let it go. But the emotional ones are the ones that stick around for years and years and years, and you find come back to bite you in the butt later on in your life, and you have all this forgiveness that you didn't even know needed to happen, so you could let that stuff go. So yes, absolutely, totally agree.
We need that. I need that, like a hotkey button for that emotional damage, like me,
so
right?
True.
Like,
so true. I'd say that's the only meme that has got me like hook, line, and sinker, where it's just like so often I just want to just paste that all over different situations.
I've got to look up a.
Yeah. You're gonna put it on there.
Emotional damage.
Oh my god.
Yeah, but it's that wouldn't be such a true meme if it wasn't literally like. I mean, you just think about all of the things that somebody has said. And this could be anybody, right? This could be a friend, family member, enemy, a teacher. I remember. I can't remember who said this story, but they were talking about. A story of somebody they had counseled, and it was a young boy who early on in his life, he had a teacher that basically told him he was going to amount to nothing, and that whatever. And that stuck with him. That took, you're talking third or fourth grade child that's told by a teacher, somebody he looks up to and respects, and is put in a place of authority over him, tells him that he's going to amount to nothing. And that like actually put him on a path of a self-destructive path of drugs, alcoholism, theft, robbery, whatever, until he became a Christian. And so somebody walked up to him. This may be a Joel Burton story. I'm not 100% sure, but somebody walked up to him and told him that he meant something and that he was going to do great things, and, prophesied over him life, right? Spoke life into him, and his whole entire life changed and switched in that moment, because from that point, nobody had ever spoke life into his situation, into his circumstance. And all he believed was what those curses that were put upon him. And, this carries on. Now we're moving kind of a little bit away from that social media section, but when we start talking about how we handle friends and family members, because a lot of times we damage the people who are closest to us. Because of bad attitudes, struggle, work days, things like that. You might yell at your children, whatever it would be, right? I'm not saying there's like punishing is one thing, but there are times, and I know I've heard it from my parents when I was a child. There were things that were said, to me that were damaging.
Right.
And it's those people that are closest to you. I mean, there's somebody on the internet a million miles away can say something to me all day long. It's going to bounce off me because it means nothing, right? But when it comes from somebody who's close to you, a family member, somebody, a peer, or somebody that you look up to, those are the ones that hurt the most, right?
Yeah.
And those
Yeah.
are the ones that can really damage you, and you can hold on to for a long time and not even realize it. But this ties hand in hand with forgiveness, right? This is one of those things we see not only through physical abuse that people deal with a lot of issues, but with the words that are spoken over them. We should probably all approach the Father at some point and break the curses that of everything that has ever been spoken over us. Because how many people have spoken something behind your back and said something into reality? How many people dislike you because of the views you have on the internet? How many people disliked you or said something, just in a flippant moment of speaking, maybe from a child or whatever, that may have power in your life that you've given to, you've given into because of something that was spoken by somebody who was above you. I definitely think that should be one of those things that maybe we should sit down in the prayer closet and then kind of go, I'm coming against all the curses, the things that have been spoken against me, by people that I loved or by, people that I hate, whatever. Let's start breaking
Right.
those things, and then in that, forgiving those people who have done those things to you, who have spoken those curses into your life.
Sure. Yeah. It's a big part of what we should be doing. I definitely agree.
Yeah. Um, yeah, and then I think Ian and I, when we had done a show and this came up when we were talking about the courts of heaven, he brought up like a really important like situation, right, about our children, and kind of how it would look in an analogy, in the courts of heaven when you're praying for your children, or you're struggling with your teen children or preteen children, or your adult children, or soon to be adult children, and you're praying and you're praying and you're praying, and you view yourself in the courts of heaven. You've got a judge sitting, the Father sitting right in front of you, right, who's going to preside over this instance that you're dealing with. And you're standing there with the defense side, and then you have the prosecution being the adversary, and you're pleading your case with the judge, and you're saying, my son's into drugs, pornography, he's out there whoring around, doing all these things. I'm terrified. I'm worried about him. All these things. Father, can you please intercede? Can you intervene? And then you have the prosecution, the adversary, who comes out and says, well, he's asking all of these wonderful things now. But if we go back and we look at when this boy was 3 years old, 10 years old, whatever, and you were yelling at him and said he was stupid, he was worthless, he was never going to amount to anything, all of these other things, when you were angry, you were the one that out of your own mouth confessed what you wanted for your child,
Sure.
and that's something to really think about on how we approach dealing with our children and dealing with family members. 'Cause I know there's many times my mom and I have gotten into it, and we've said things that we, later regret and have to go back and apologize for. But you have to really, again, this goes back to, we have to take every thought captive, and we really, I think we're so in this modern society, we take so much for granted. We speak freely because we have the freedom to speak, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's a good thing that we just say whatever pops into our mind, right?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I think you nailed it. The part where we're supposed to take every thought captive. Earlier you started talking about the thoughts and whatnot, and the Matthew 5 passage that pretty clearly states, you have to take that thought captive before you let it turn into something more. When it takes root, and you actually start acting on it. If you haven't taken it captive and or learned how to take those thoughts captive, put yourself in a lot of hot water a lot more often than you need to be, just based on that one. I want to say it's elementary in theory, but it's not elementary in application, I feel like, because a lot of people struggle with that very thing, myself included. So it is a very important part of our walk, because if you can't do that, then you're constantly going to be struggling. You're behind the curve, behind the eight ball when it comes to dealing with the other stuff and the actual the resisting and staying on the right track, as opposed to constantly dealing with the onslaught of thoughts running through your head that don't belong there, that aren't from you, but you're constantly just dealing with those temptations and whatnot. So I mean, it all ties together, and it all has a common root. So it's just, this is just one very specific part of the puzzle, as it were. In being able to stay away from some of that stuff.
I think James, especially for us as believers, right, about the way that we speak. James talks over. He's so insightful when it comes to this topic. James 1:26. Pretty short and in context here. It says, "Those who consider themselves religious and yet do not keep a tight rein on their tongues deceives themselves, and their religion is worthless." I'm like, I mean, what I'm saying? That's like, I mean, that's hitting right in the belt, right? You can't claim to be in this faith and walking the way, and then just letting your tongue do whatever it wants to. Because that is evidence of itself that you are not actually following what you're saying by the way that you're voicing and speaking to others.
Sure. Yeah.
And what doesn't Paul say? That whole litany of, you can have the tongue of angels and speak in all things. You can have the faith that moves mountains. You can have I can't remember what the other one was.
All kinds of mighty miracles and faith to raise the dead and all that stuff. And if you have not, it's nothing.
Yeah, if you don't have love, you're a banging, a clanging gong, or he's basically saying that it's all worth nothing if you're not doing these things with love. And if you were approaching a topic or a subject with love, then you would know how to bridle yourself and how to keep your tongue from being damaging to somebody. Because, I mean, Jesus spells it out pretty clear when he says, "Do unto others as you want done unto yourself," right?
Sure.
So are you approaching that topic or that circumstance the way you would want somebody to approach you? And if you can't wrap your head around that person's circumstance, then you're not the person to be talking to them. Because our testimony is how we get and reach to those people. And if your testimony does not align with that person's, maybe you're not the best person to be talking to that person, because you're not going to have the compassion to wrap your head around the circumstances of that person's life. And I think this is what's so damning about social media. Like, because how well do you know people? I've got like almost 5,000 friends on Facebook, and there's a good portion I do know, but there's a huge portion I don't. And I don't know what their life experiences are like. I don't know why they have approached certain topics certain ways. And for me to go into their life and say, "You're doing it wrong, blah, 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 this is the way to do it," I don't have any relationship with that person. I'm not approaching it with love, and I don't understand the circumstances of why that person believes what they believe. And so I don't have the compassion and the love to encompass that understanding of that person's life, to be able to walk in and I'm going to learn you today. Like, you're going to learn exactly what I know. Now, there are other times when God brings people into your life, or you're called to be a teacher, where you're meant to speak out and to reach people's hearts and whatever, because he has prepared them for this event where you're supposed to meet these people or this person or whatever. But social media takes so much of that experience out of the hands of the Holy Spirit and puts you into a sphere, an echo chamber, that's all centered around, bumping up your opioids and your dopamine hits, right?
Sure.
The more likes, the more shares, the more interactions. When you hear that ding on your phone, you're getting a dopamine hit. They say it's comparable to pulling a slot machine at a casino. You're getting a hit of this ongoing process. And it's like, how much of that is really entailed? Like, how much of the Holy Spirit and working for the kingdom is really involved in this? Or is this self-gratification on a level that you can't even comprehend? Because we're talking about chemical biology inside of your brain. Like, is this really doing what it's supposed to be doing? Or is this doing more damage because you're chasing a high? It's really something to consider. And it's really made me take a step back from social media, like, especially from the debating aspect. That's been gone for quite a while, but man, I see so much of this constant banter and back and forth between people, And what's the real outcome? Is it beneficial? Does it help the kingdom?
Right.
I mean, I know people will argue that it is. I'm called to do this. I'm called to do whatever. But it's the evidence of the fruit and the discernment that is so imperative, because when you look at the rest of the posts, you look at the rest of the things that they're talking about. I mean, I've literally seen people like straight swearing and cussing people out and damning people, right, on posts by people, you know, who I mean, like, I've seen some pretty foul language, and I'm a person who cusses, like, right. I'm not saying that just because you say you know, in a moment where you're talking with the fellas and you drop, you know, a 4-letter word, that you are not, that's not fruit. But it's how that they attack somebody and how their you know, how their approach is, that's damning, and shows the evidence of their fruit, right? I don't care about flip it. That seems to be my word tonight. Flip it. Where's that coming from? I can never use that word. But nonchalant words, right? Like 4-letter words in a conversation is different than actually using language to be harmful to someone, right? There's intent behind that, right? I can have a knife with no intent. It cuts, and, you know, cuts bread and butters it, right? But if I have an intent to stab someone with that knife, it makes that knife all the more deadlier, right? It's about intent. It's about what does my heart want me to do with this knife? Well, what does my heart, which the Bible says is deceitful and wicked, what does it want to do with my words that I'm speaking to people or through social media?
Sure. Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, I don't have a whole lot to disagree with you on that one for sure. Just, I mean, there's a lot of good stuff in there, but I think that it's we need to stop following our hearts, you know, when it comes to what we think we need to say. You know, I think there's a lot of discernment that really needs to happen when it comes to deciding, you know, what is something that we're supposed to be saying in a certain situation. Sometimes knowing how to just shut up and let the specific time pass until you're given the specific answers to what you're supposed to be saying. You know, I think it's a big part, because if you can't do that, maybe you were supposed to be the one that was going to speak into that person's life. But if you didn't wait, you went ahead and shut that door because you said something stupid that you shouldn't have said in the first place. You know, maybe you lost an opportunity to speak life later on, you know, to that person. So,
yeah, back to Psalms, right? Because David seems to hit on this a lot, where he talks about how damaging the tongue can be. Psalms 52 starts out, it says, "You who practice deceit, your tongue plots destruction. It's like a sharpened razor. You love evil rather than good, falsehood rather than speaking truth. You love every harmful word, you deceitful tongue. Surely God will bring you down into everlasting ruin. He will snatch you up and pluck you from your tent. He will uproot you from the land of the living. The righteous will see and fear. They will laugh at you, saying, here now is the man who did not make God his stronghold, but trusted in the great wealth and grew strong by destroying others." I mean, again, this is one of those oh man, all these scriptures are coming to me. One of the things that God hates is a haughty, or is a lying tongue, right? There's like 7 things that God hates. Let me pull it up real quick. Arrogant, haughty eyes, right, is the first one. A lying tongue is one that speaks falsehood knowingly and willingly with an intent to deceive others. Lying can be used to, so it's John 8:44. It says, you are of the father of the devil, and your will is to do your father's desires. He was a murderer from the beginning, and he does not stand in the truth, because there is no truth in him. When he lies, he speaks of his own character, for he is a liar and the father of... It cut off there.
It cut off?
And he is the liar and the father of all lies, right? So that again is another one of those... because the Bible is very adamant about... That's one of the commandments, right? You're not supposed to like speak deceptive words over, over a person, right? I mean, some people say, like lying. I've seen a lot of people that have tried to justify lying in the Bible, right? And lying in,
Yeah.
There are some rabbinical writings in the Talmud which allow for deceit if it's to help a person. And then when you look at Islam, Islam allows for deception for conversion, right? You can lie to somebody to convert them to Islam, right? So, but we have the actual scriptures of the Bible which tell us that the words that come out of our mouth, the falsehoods that can come out of our mouth, are just as deadly as what the Old Testament used to apply them, right? So if a person was caught stealing or whatever, there was always two witnesses. There had to be two witnesses. And if those two people came together and they lied about that, that person would be put to death. It was literally a death sentence if you lied about someone about one of these laws. Adultery, there were burnings, there were stonings, you got your hand cut off, all of these different things, right? If you lied about a person, it would be seriously in the physical detrimental to their health. And again, this speaks to, we're not that far away from the truth, the way it is now. When we're speaking about a person or speaking to a person, or you're lying about a person, that causes someone else now to believe something negative about that person. And then so it's almost like how Jesus viewed it, right? You if you have something negative, negative thoughts about somebody, you've already killed them in your heart. Now you're convincing someone else to take that knife and kill them too, right? So you're in a derogatory form. If I'm lying to somebody about you, right, and they despise you at this point, and they're angry and they hate you, they've killed you in their heart. It's just like me handing him a knife and say, just go stab him, right? I mean, look how powerful just this little tongue that we have in our mouth, how much power it has in controlling our lives in the way that other people view each other, the way that they view us, all kinds of things. There's so many different aspects. James said it right. Like if a big, massive boat can be steered by this one little, rudder, right? How much so is our life steered by this one little muscle in our mouth?
Sure.
I'm gonna run in here and see. D&G says Islam says you can lie and break oaths and covenants, contracts with the enemy. I'm just reading through the chat here real quick here. I see our buddy Fiducia's on the channel in the chat. What's up, buddy? I would have loved to have you on here for this, but I didn't get to get in touch with you tonight. I know he's got a ton of stuff to talk about this. Let's see if anybody else is. I don't want to miss anybody's. My ability to pierce people with words. Be Good says my ability to pierce people with words is a shameful regret. Yeah, absolutely. I am in the same boat. I'm very quick-witted and am very dangerous with my tongue. That's why I would only be talking about this if God hasn't already, put me through the ringer first, on this whole thing, and the amount of abuse that I dealt out to people, regrettably, I've had to deal with that. I've had to apologize to not only the Father, but many times a lot of the people that I was abusive to. And there are so many people that, especially with the internet, that I don't know personally, that I have damaged the view of me being a believer because of the things that I'd said on the internet, that I will never be able to apologize. So the only thing that I can do is apologize to the Father and hope that he makes amends for my wrongs. But thinking about that, I might be having an argument or dispute with somebody, and I think in my head, it's just between me and this person, and then maybe another person jumps in and we've got this whole, roundabout, right? But there are probably 100 to 1,000 people who could view that thread. I don't know how many times I've made a post that was controversial, and it ends up being 157 comments long, and half of those are mine, right? But I have 5,000 people, and once the more interactions a post is getting, the more availability it shows up on a person's feed. So the more controversial a topic on Facebook, the more people are going to see it. And so the more interactions with it, the more people get to see it. And sometimes those things, not from my perspective, but or in my life, I've never had anything like go super viral. But in some of those instances, there are lots of people like Gina Carano and things like that make a post and affect hundreds of millions of people are, seeing these posts and stuff. And you never know in this instance when one of those posts somebody could grab a snapshot of it, it goes to Reddit and then it blows up or something. You know what I mean? You never know. And then then that's completely out of your control. You can't delete it. Once it goes viral, then that is a representation of who you are in the social media sphere and what and somebody could even take it out of context or lie about it or twist it. I had an instance at my job when all of this C-19 stuff happened, where I was in a private forum for the union that I'm a part of, and I made some comments about how I felt about it. And they snapshotted some of the comments that I made. There was a person who I got into a debate with, or an argument, a back and forth, because he was calling me names, and I went back and forth with him, and he took snapshots of it and sent it up the corporate chain, and I had to go in and have this whole meeting about why I'm like, I'm not associated with my job. When I leave there and clock out, I don't have anything that says where I work. I don't have any place that says, what I do, right? And I don't represent your company outside of me working. When I take your shirt off, I don't work at your company anymore, right? Sure. So I went in and told him all that, but I was in a private forum. Somebody took this out of context, and somebody was trying to get me in trouble by taking these snapshots. How many times has that been done with a social media post? Do you want a snapshot of you saying something negative to somebody representing who you are as a Christian where hundreds of thousands of people could see it? I mean, again, this is something we have to think about. We have to take captive all of these thoughts and understand how damaging it could be to ourselves, to others, but how it's affecting the way people view your walk. Because you're supposed to represent a Christian and how Christ is supposed to walk, right? Or how we're supposed to walk like Christ.
Sure.
So if you're, somebody takes something out of context and is abusing that is detrimental to the way people view your walk, and it can damage how you approach other people and in your part of the ministry, right? You're supposed to be going out and preaching and spreading the gospel, but if you get some viral post that you're a liar, racist, or whatever, and you didn't intend it to be that way, but you didn't think before you snapped back, now that's damaging to your ministry in general. And I mean, man, it's so rough. I could just go on and on about how in such a difficult time we're in. It's such a different time because
I was gonna say the same thing. I mean, in the day and age we live in, I mean, it's hard because no matter it almost regardless what you say, it's going to make someone mad, and society has taught everyone to be so sensitive to things and to attach their self-worth to all these things that if it gets attacked, then all that being said, perception is still king. And so as we are going out and we're supposed to be doing the right thing, it requires us to be what Yeshua says, I'm sending you out to be like wise as serpents and innocent as doves. We're supposed to be still operating within the society that we find ourselves in. I mean, it just raises the bar of the difficulty level a little bit. It gets kicked up from for any sports fans, Madden, NBA 2K players out there, from rookie to, all-star, the level of difficulty gets kicked up a few notches because of the society and where we're at and what's happening around us. But that's not then to be like, well, no matter what I say, is just everyone's going to get offended or whatever. So I just say whatever I want and offend everybody. It's not necessarily the route we're talking about here. So it's just it definitely does require just a certain level of discernment to be able to be at peace, knowing that not everyone is going to agree with everything that you say. Not everyone is going to see things the way that you see it, especially if you're looking at the world through a biblical worldview. And and we have to figure out which are the hills that we are supposed to die on. You know, where does the line of compromise, for our faith truly lie, as opposed to, what are we doing just to have an easier go go at it, in this life. So yeah, there's you you pretty much hit the nail on the head there, Aaron.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's Paul writing in Romans, correct? He Romans 3:10 kind of hits it on the head about this. Like, I see so much haughty and prideful, just in my discernment when I'm viewing like these things, these arguments and these debates going back and forth, and it's like you see a person is attacking another person, and it's funny because in the religious circles, it's like you got two people. Remember that gladiator show where they had the pillars and two people had like they were on top of the pillars and they had the bow staff with the big foam pads on the end, right? And
Oh,
they
oh
had
yeah, pupil sticks. Yeah.
so they did that in the military too, right? Like, but
Oh
they have
yeah.
these two people up on poles, and there's these two people who are haughty and prideful, like debating over who's right and who's more right, right? And it's just whacking each other until you can knock somebody down. But Romans 3, he says, as it is written, there is no one who is righteous, not even one. There is no one who understands. There is no one who seeks God. All have turned away. They have together become worthless. There is no one who does good, not even one. Their throats are open graves. Their tongue practices deceit. The poison of vipers is on their lips. Their mouths are full of cursing and bitterness. Their feet are swift to shed blood. Ruin and misery marks their way. In the way of peace they do not know. There is no fear of God before their eyes. Now we know that whatever the law says, it says to those who are under the law, so that every mouth may be silenced and the whole world held accountable to God. I mean, that's just that kind of that picture that I get though of the two people just like they've lifted themselves up and they're just going to beat each other down until they knock somebody down, right? And that I don't know, like for
They
me
take it as a personal victory, but at the end of the day, like you did nothing for the kingdom whatsoever.
yeah, yeah. And when did we get to the point though that we've elevated we've done so much, right? I mean, because there's so much in the scripture that talks against this, but we've come so far. We came out of the Roman Catholicism Babylonian church, and we've elevated, and now we've moved through Torah, and we're doing all of the feast days, and we're keeping Sabbath, and we're doing all these things, and it gives me the right to look down at everybody else. This is exactly what Jesus saw in the Pharisees, Sadducees, and the scribes. They
Sure.
walked around comparing how long their zed seats were and praying in the streets so that all the rest of the people can see them. Their haughty attitudes, that attitude that looked down and said, "We've accomplished so much." And when you look at the writings of Paul, he says, like, I was a Pharisee among Pharisees. I studied under Gamaliel. Like I was, he had a PhD in Pharisaical law, and among all things, he's the one that walks around and says, nothing that I did means anything.
Right.
I
Right.
don't, he talked about himself in the third person just so that he wouldn't, get prideful. Like, I once knew a man who did this, like, I mean, to me, it's amazing that that's the elevation, is to humble yourself to where you're almost non-existent.
Right.
That's what the Bible tells us, right? The greatest in the kingdom of heaven will be the least, the servant of men here. So you can elevate yourself all you want to, but the Bible says that you get your rewards here. And that's scary, right? If you cause others to fall away, you will be considered least in the kingdom. Yeah, you'll make it in, but you're on janitorial duty. Is that what you really want? I mean, I don't know. If love is the key to our mansion place in heaven, and you don't have any love, I don't know, man. It's scary to think that you tried to accomplish so much, but you failed in the least of these things.
Right.
You failed to just love others, and you fail. You might say, well, I did all the 10 commandments and I did all these things. Well, obviously, if your heart is not a part of it, you only did the surface level, and you only
Right.
did it to get the glory of mankind. Like, to be able to just walk around and say, well, I follow all the 10 commandments. I do this, I do
Sure.
that. So, I think it's really we need to question ourselves about, again, why are we doing the things that we're doing? And then how is that actually affecting the kingdom? Are we doing it for ourselves? Can we stop lying to ourselves and say that we're doing it for the kingdom? Because many will go to the Father in those days, or to Jesus in those days, and say, Lord, Lord, did we not cast out demons, heal the sick, do all these things in your name? And he says, turn away from me, you workers of iniquity, you lawless ones, right? And we're going to see that all over the place. And there's so many people that claim to walk this walk, but they've done more damage to saying, to a Christian name. I mean, I can think of a whole lot of evangelical preachers and pastors who are out there who, over the last 30 years, who've done more damage to the perception of Christianity than they have actually helped it. Because they weren't actually walking it. It says they honor me with their lips, but their heart is far from me. And that was what Jesus said to the Pharisees.
Yeah.
Man, this hour has flown by. I'm sorry. I'm on my podium, but we're going to take a quick break right here real quick, guys, and we're going to come back and we're going to keep talking about this. Speak life. That is the important thing that we're talking about tonight. So we are going to take a short commercial break. This is actually a commercial from Ian Chadrick, who's in the chat. We love you, brother. And he just posted up another Guerrilla Gospel short podcast thing on Take on the World TV just before the show went live. So if you guys get the chance after this show or tomorrow or whatever, make sure you guys check that out and watch that, because he's got some really good words in that. We'll be back after just a few minutes, guys.
When we're laying on our deathbed, you're not going to worry about how much money you had, how much power you had, how much prestige. You're going to see that was all game, that was all an illusion. The only thing that's going to matter is the impact you had on other people's lives.
We are all on a separate journey. But the beautiful thing about our life here on this earth is at my funeral, they ain't going to talk about my success. They're going to talk about who Nick was and how Nick lived and how Nick loved and encouraged.
Success is incredibly important, but even more important than success, it's having an impact. It's knowing you haven't walked the planet in vain. It's knowing that because you've been here, you've blessed lives, you've developed people, and you have made the world a better place.
The effect you have on others is the most valuable currency there is. Everything you gain in life will rot and fall apart, and all that will be left of you is what was in your heart.
Life is a mirror. And life gives us not what we want. Life gives us who we are. When you were born, you cried while the world rejoiced. Live your life in such a way that when you die, the world cries while you rejoice.
All right, guys, thanks for hanging out to the other side of the commercial. We're back for hour 2. I again am Aaron Sampson. Blah, blah, blah. Man, I can't talk. This is going to be one of those that I have to clip for like all the times I goof up. I'm Aaron Sampson. This is Daniel. If you guys are just tuning in, make sure you guys like and subscribe. Support the Take on the World TV channel, which I just saw the other day that because they weren't actually going to be able to do the live event conference this year, that they're actually going to do a digital one. So it'll be another digital conference like we did in 2019, which will be awesome. It'll be cool to do. So make sure you guys are supporting the channel, like, subscribe, share to your favorite groups. This show is just one of many that are on this platform, in this group. And we like to point everybody to the direction of the channel, because they've been gracious enough to have us here and let us do our thing. So, yeah, I forgot. Oh yeah. Did I say your name, Daniel? Gosh, man. Guys, thanks for hanging in with us, because this is going to be a rough one tonight. But I was just thinking on over the break, because I was just figuring out how I was going to come back and what we were going to start off with. But then I was just thinking about, like, this is going to be one of those messages. Like, I always wonder why, like, this channel doesn't, like, get, like, massive traction, you know, and, like, take off. Then I'm like, because this is one of those messages that, like, people don't want to hear. You know, this is like one of those topics. I know for most of the people that are in the chat, and I've seen a couple of new people pop in, Jason T, and I saw JJ in here. If I missed you guys, I know Be Good, Tracy Jones. I just want to say hi to you guys. But this is one of those things that, like, just doesn't get massive traction. It's like, we're not telling you, like, everything's great, everything's peachy. We're not trying to tickle your ears. Like, I know most of the people that I've had interactions with the Take on the World TV community are amazing people. And this is probably not something that I'm not talking directly to you guys. I don't see most of the people that I'm friends with on here that watch this show. It's not coming from them. This is things that I'm seeing out. But we have to be careful not to be sucked in, because we may be part of a group of people that is not going to participate, but it's so easy to let our pride get pricked, and we jump in head first into something through that knee-jerk reaction, that process, right? Like, you know, well, I'm going to show this person or whatever. And so like most of our messages, it's, you know, it's a reminder to those that listen, you know, to always keep checking on ourselves and keep ourselves in check, and take every word captive and every thought captive, and to bridle our tongue. But, you know, at some point, maybe somebody is going to see this. It's going to get shared into a group that needs to hear it or something like that. And it's going to help people. So, you know, I don't ever try to direct this at a particular person or a particular group, because it doesn't matter which religious group you come from, what denomination you call, we all suffer from the same problems, and we all suffer from a variation of the same, you know, tragic sins, you know, and struggles with the flesh. So, you know, if this applies to you, you know, take some time to be, you know, with the Father and try to work through this, and try to learn how to control your flesh and die to your flesh, circumcise your flesh as it would be, right? Circumcise your heart, because this ultimately boils down to heart issues. I don't know how many fiducias in here in the chat, how many times he and I have boiled every single issue down that we come up with. It comes down to a heart issue. Every sin, every, you know, problem in the community, every problem in social media, it comes down to heart issues. And again, if you're struggling with this, it's time to start circumcising that heart and taking it to the Father and have him work on that. If you're not, this is always a good reminder that we should always be on guard and make sure that we're continuing to walk this process out. So, again, so what are some other places where you see, speaking things can affect others, or I mean, anything that stands out to you that we haven't hit already?
I mean, I know we talked a lot about the closest personal connections that we have. Our wives, you know, as men, our wives are sometimes target number one, just because of their proximity to us as we struggle with some of these things. If we find ourselves struggling with them, a lot of times that's the first person that gets the brunt of that. And so you know, as we're trying to navigate relationships that are based and rooted in this walk of faith, you know, in the Most High, man, we got to be careful. We really have to be careful and really make sure that we are building up our wives and not tearing them down. You know, they do so much for us. You know, sometimes a whole lot of stuff we don't even know they're doing for us. You know, and then not even to try and calculate all the stuff that we know that they're doing for us. But that's a place where how can we possibly pray over them and bless them and speak all these good things with the same tongue that we're, tearing them down with. And so I'd say that's in the body. Like I said, this is not going to anybody else, but to us first. But it's just one thing that I've found that it has to get taken care of. Like that's the first person we should be taking care of and speaking life into, as opposed to tearing them down, because boy, would we be messed up without them. So
yeah, absolutely. And I agree. I mean, when you're talking about what we say to our spouses, the scriptures tell us that we are one in flesh. So, just imagine taking that knife we're talking about and stabbing yourself. Because how many times have you started a fight because of a bad attitude or whatever that ends up causing you more pain because, right, you hurt her and she hurts you, or vice versa, however it works. And it does nothing but destroy that situation. It causes animosity and anger and frustration and the destruction of the marriage over a process, right? And of all places, you would think, right, the last two that we're going to talk about are probably the most important when it comes to what we speak, but the household and your spouse, and then of yourself, you'd think that those would be the two that you would want to keep the closest guarded, right? But they seem to be the ones that are attacked the easiest, because that person, your spouse, is so close to you, knows everything, knows all the triggers, and so do the demonic influences that want to start the fights. They know exactly which buttons to push to make you fire back and damage them. And then it just becomes, a Russia-Ukraine situation, right? Like there's a war going on in your household. And we're probably I just said that. And now we're going to get like struck on the channel, right? I don't know if that's one of those things you can't talk about on YouTube now. We haven't done a show in 2 or 3 weeks. So, yeah. But yeah, it's that is one of those, like, that should be like one of the closely guarded ones. Should be one that we bridle ourselves the most is inside of our own home when speaking to our family members, right? Because especially as men, we're the ones who are the umbrella for protection and stuff for our household. So whatever you allow to get attacked into whatever you open the door for by the things that you say, by the actions that you do, that attacks, they're going to attack the weakest links in your household, whether that be your children or your wife. And then you've got chaos in the household and everything is going to pot, and you're going, well, what happened? Well, it's your fault. Right? You're supposed to be the gateway to protect your family from these things, and you, by your own admission, have allowed the enemy to have legal right to attack your family by the things that you've spoken about your family and to your family. So, sure. Again, that should be one of those that is probably the most closely guarded, which is the easiest for the enemy to attack.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
our kids hear that stuff.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And so we'll call it like trauma by association. Like it may not have been 100% directed at them, but I think we've all seen it in some way, shape, or form. Kids that were raised in a household where that relationship wasn't so sacred that there was protection that was happening, but just constant attack, and that just that runs over into the kids, and then they raise their families with that being the normal, and so that just starts that slippery slope of a repetitive cycle over and over, and just more hurting people, and it takes supernatural intervening to make that stop. And so that's it. People in this community, in this faith, true believers that truly put their money where their mouth is and say, hey, this is really what I want to do. You're the first step is to raising that next generation of how they're going to treat the world once you're gone, once your influence is gone, once your influence is past. How well did you raise them to operate in love, like we were talking about earlier? How much love are they going to be speaking into the world? regardless of how well they keep the commandments, how much are they pouring into, into the world, and truly being that example that Christ gave for us. And it starts with us, because monkey see, monkey do. And I've got two little monkeys. I mean, 16-month-old is just absolute. I mean, I think we messed up by getting her a jungle gym, because and then taking her to we went to this like drive-through safari thing and saw like giraffes and a bunch of exotic animals and everything. And then the last stop was all the stinking monkeys, man. And I think they rubbed off on her a little bit. She came home and she's trying to swing from the chandelier and stuff. So, monkey see, monkey do. So if they're not getting a good example of what they should be doing, they're going to be acting like they see the rest of the world acting, which tends to be not acting in love, tearing people down, speaking curses over even the people they love the most, and whatnot. So
yeah. Well, and it's a perfect example with monkey see, monkey do, right? My little kids. It's so funny, like you walk through the house and you stub your toe and you drop the S word. You're like, right? And then like my daughter will hear it, and then she'll be over there like S S S S. Just that's what they pick up, even though they don't necessarily know that it's a bad word. But they realize that there's something, right? There's something about it, because you're trying to, hey, don't say that, right? They'll pick up on that same kind of thing. If you're openly expounding like curses into your family, well, they're going to pick that up because it's natural, right? Like that is what they're going to do, and it's going to become normal to them. So, this just adds to the generational curses that you've allowed to be passed on to your generations. This allows the environmental curses, the demonic, opposition, right? That is involved, and now they're thinking that it's normal to speak these things into their life and into the life of others, and to be able to speak down to someone or talk negatively to someone or over someone. That's become normal to them because they see it in the household. The example that they have is through their family and through others, and it becomes normal for them. And then you just have continued that cycle on. And, the scriptures tell us we're supposed to raise up our children right, and they won't depart from the way. So this is one of those things. The Bible is very adamant about, what we should be doing with our tongue. And if we don't teach our children that from a young age, then they're going to start doing these things as well, and opening up the doorways and bringing this stuff into their life because of the simple mistake that you didn't, that wasn't one of those things that you attacked. I mean, when was the last time? I don't think the church recognizes this either. I don't remember the last time I heard a sermon that talked about what we say about ourselves, the blessings and curses that we say on other people. I think it's very rare that I've ever heard even any pastoralship that's ever talked about this, Right. So it's an important topic because, I mean, we've just went through a litany of scriptures here that talk about this, but it's not approached by the Christian community. And I dare say the Torah community as well. Like, we focus on these like key points that define what group we're a part of, but the overall scriptures just kind of get left in the wayside. Like, it's like, well, we do this, and this. It's like, okay, yeah, but you're missing so much. Like, there's so much. You may have attained a level here, but now it's time to start working on the next thing. Let's work on the next thing and the next thing. We never attain perfection, right? It's a goal to seek after. It's never that we attain 100% perfection.
Right.
Going back to, because I just found another scripture about what other people see is very important. And again, Psalms has a whole bunch of these. They're fantastic, right? But it says it's Psalms 39. I won't read a whole bunch of this one. 39:2, and it says, where did I start at? I will watch my ways and keep my tongue. It's 31. Psalms 39:1. Sorry, guys. I will watch my ways and keep my tongue from sin. I will put a muzzle on my mouth while in the presence of the wicked. So, it's again, that's even amongst the people that we would consider our enemies or whatever, or, that want to do us harm. Because it goes on and says, so I remained utterly silent, not even saying anything good, but my anguish increased. My heart will grow hot within me while I meditate with the burning fire. Then I spoke with my tongue. Show me, Lord, my life's end and the number of the days. Let me know how fleeting my life is. Okay, so not really relevant to the rest of what we were saying, but
still a good verse.
Yeah, yeah. The rest, right. That's for another thing. Like that's a whole.
We could do a whole we could do a whole show just on that last verse thing.
Absolutely, but again, that's let me bridle my tongue even amongst the wicked, right? So maybe that's something to think about too. I know that I'm kind of a little bit more lax with my language when I'm at the shop around all my shop guys, right? All the guys I work with, the dudes at the shop, right? But how is my testimony impeded by, if I go in and I say all kinds of, vulgar jokes, and then I want to talk to them about a serious biblical topic, right? They're going to see me no different than the world. So again, this is an important thing. We should be always speaking life into the circumstances and speaking life into everyday conversations, not speaking the way of the world, not following the way of the world, not doing what the world does. And again, that can also even fall into complaining, right? Like we can complain too much. The Bible tells us we're supposed to be accepting of the lot that we're given, and we're supposed to thank the Father through good and bad circumstances and situations, and not be complaining and moaning. Jesus hits this so many times with different parables that he talks about the people and their complaining. And then we can even look at the Exodus and see the punishments that were given to the Hebrew people because they just kept complaining. God was giving them everything they needed, and their hearts were in the wrong place, and they just kept, let's go back to Egypt. Let's go back to Egypt. I mean, how many of us have actually pulled ourselves from the world, or we are attempting to pull ourselves from Babylon, but then keep going, but Babylon had all this good stuff, right? Let's go back to the way it was in Babylon. It was so much easier to do things in Babylon, right? So again, you're allowing the complaints and things to come out of your mouth instead of muzzling.
Speaking of complaints, I almost just said, whoever's yawning in the chat, quit it because you're making me yawn. And Tyler Porter says that I'm making him yawn. So whoever started it, I'm complaining at you. I'm already tired enough, and I could feel it coming right through the airwaves. That yawn, it's contagious. So my bad, Tyler. We'll figure out who it was that started that. And but no, it's definitely. Complaining is the absolute, I guess it's the antithesis of what we're supposed to be doing when we are supposed to, like when it comes to how we're supposed to enter into the courts of heaven, enter into his sanctuary and his gates with praise and thanksgiving, right? And if we're showing up with a stack full of complaints that we filed, in the courtroom of heaven, he's like, wait, what? Hold on. What? Like, let's back up here. That's not what we're supposed to be doing. So yeah, it's an absolute, like, if there's anything that would, like nullify, the good that he's doing is complaining about the things that we, sorry, I got distracted. Jason, he started yawning just by reading the comments. So the yawns are contagious tonight, guys.
It's so bizarre that it even travels through the internet.
But that's how we're really, like, we're actually fellowshipping together. We got some good community when your yawns are affecting each other. It's like you're in the same room. So anyways, yeah, I mean it's just stop complaining, because man, if we stopped, and I've learned this really over and over and over and over again the last 3 months as my son was in the hospital, man, you start to see how much of the little things that we take for granted just day to day, I'm not going to sit here and list off all the things that I was shown that I was taking for granted, but it starts stacking up really quick, and you're like, man, why how have I not been giving him thanks for just these little things that to us seem like little, until we realize how drastic they really do affect us, once we see it happening. So enter into his courts with thanksgiving and praise, and because you don't want to have that be how you're entering and going to him with a list full of complaints, because it's not the truth at the end of the day. Because once we realize what he has actually done for us, we realize there's a lot to give him praise for. So I don't want to back up too much. There was something I was going to say earlier, as we were talking about taking care of our wives and whatnot. I want to say it's, see if I can remember off the top of my head, 1 Peter 5:7 or something like that, that it talks about treating our wives with respect and treating them as the weaker vessel, and taking care of them. And a lot, I'm trying to paraphrase a little bit, but it goes on to, at the end of that verse in that same context, so that your prayers aren't hindered, right? And so there is really this idea that if you're not treating your spouse correctly, especially your wife, and you're tearing her down and not building her up, you're already right then and there affecting the I guess, or the power of your prayer, like the actual velocity of your prayer, as it were. If you've got that, something like that that's going on in your relationship, and that could be holding you back in a lot of things. If you're praying for other things, but you don't have that specific thing taken care of and happening right, you could be really in for some just struggle, when it comes down to it. Like, man, if your prayers aren't getting through, that's bad news, especially for the spiritual warfare. You could feel like you're doing all this stuff in spiritual warfare and doing all this and that and whatnot, and if you feel like you're not having that breakthrough, that could be one of the things that's hindering it. So definitely something that we got to keep in mind as it relates to this topic, but then it starts branching out into a whole lot of other things that start getting messed up if we don't have that preliminary, prerequisite taken care of.
Yeah. I'm just looking at Proverbs, for those of you who are following along, Proverbs 21:22, and 23 is probably the most pertinent verse there, but it says, one who is wise can go up against a city of the mighty and pull down the strongholds in which they trust. Those who guard their mouths and their tongues keep themselves from calamity. The proud and arrogant person, the mocker, is his name, behaves with insolent fury. The craving of a sluggard will be the death of him because his hands refuse to work. This is just kind of going through, but I just like that one verse. I'll read it in a different. It says, watch your tongue and keep your mouth shut and you will stay out of trouble. That's the New Living Translation.
Pretty boiled down and blunt right there.
Right.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, you think about that too. Like, I mean, how much trouble can you get yourself into if you don't say anything? Right? This is something that I learned in sales, and also just like with working with people. Like, if you want to make a person uncomfortable, ask them a question and then just stare at them, like, and wait for a response. Like, or it's just in natural conversation between two people, one person speaks and another person responds. So this was something that, like, I started seeing in sales, like, when we were selling cars and stuff, right? You would ask a person, hey, this is the price. What do you think about that? And you just get uncomfortable, and like you have to answer, because the uncomfortableness is really just awkward, right? And we see this same kind of thing done with Jesus when they ask him questions, and even other of the apostles and stuff later on. Like, the silence, it speaks sometimes so much more than words do. Right. Because it can cause the other person to be uncomfortable. So sometimes we think that we have to fill like a time frame with all of these words, right, to try to jam something in. Like when you're trying to work with somebody for deliverance or whatever, or trying to teach somebody and disciple somebody about Christ, sometimes we think we need to just, vomit all of this information into a person. Sometimes we need to sit and listen. I think that's one of the biggest things that I see with a lot of people that debate and argue or whatever, is they're not listening to you when they're listening to respond to something that you've said, right? So it's they're not actually listening to what's being spoken out of your mouth. They're listening to find something that they can snag onto and use it to fight back with you. So sometimes silence is more powerful than actually using the words. And there's times when we should be silent, right? Because we just think, I'm just going to start telling them all this stuff or whatever. And sometimes we need to let the Holy Spirit speak. And sometimes that just has to be that still small voice, and you don't need to be that voice. So there's a lot of times where there's so much value in the silence. And that's just something to add to that overall conversation, because sometimes you don't need to think about how you should respond. You should think about how the Holy Spirit wants to respond. And the only time we can do that is to shut our mouths, right? And get ourselves, that keeps us out of trouble. And I like the way that says. That was Proverbs 21:26, right? Or just 21 something. I don't remember where I lost it. 21:22? No, 21:23. Sorry about that. But so the final thing that I really want to get into is like we talked about wives, spouses, kids, friends, the rest of the world, coworkers, social media, all that. But the one thing we haven't hit on yet is what we speak over ourselves. And the English language is full of terrible idioms that speak curses over our lives. Like, you say something like, "Oh man, that kills me." Like we literally speak into reality an idiom of death over our lives. Or, "Oh man, just watching that makes me so sick." Or, "Man, I'm starting to feel sick today." Well, like if you woke up and you didn't say that, how, there's like a psychological, like whole aspect to this as well. But I think there's a huge spiritual aspect that gets overlooked. They say if you're sad, if you force yourself to smile, it'll actually make you happier, right? So in that same kind of vein, if you wake up and you want to complain about things and you already have a complaint in your heart, and you start complaining about it, does that make your day any better? It doesn't. And I had a friend of mine, a real close friend of mine, he was my best man at my wedding, and he used to talk about a circumstance with somebody who was really close to him and his family, and he called them an emotional vampire. And he said what they would do is they would wake up with all of this anger, hate, fear, whatever, right? And they would go, "Here's a little piece of crap for you. Here's a little piece of crap for you." And every single person they would come across, they would have a negative interaction with them and share their anger, dismay, their, the bad parts of them. And they would take a little bit of that person's joy. It was like vampirism, right? I'm going to give you my bad, my, everything that's going on, bad in my life. And I'm going to suck some of your joy out of it, right? It's an emotional vampirism. And like that is something to understand. Like that kind of person can speak things over your life, but we can also do that to ourselves, right? We can speak this negativity into our life and speak curses into our lives by the way that we say things. And like I said, English is terrible with that. Just like the Greek, abuses, like the whole Greek is filled with all of the names of their ancient gods, right? Well, English is full of a lot of idioms that are detrimental to ourselves, and we say them so flippantly. Again, there's that word, but we do. I mean, it's so easily off the tongue, no pun intended, that we say a lot of the things that we shouldn't be saying just because we say them. I mean, I can think of a whole list of just these dumb things that we say, and then we can believe them, and it can really affect us. About like not feeling good, waking up and not feeling good, or little things that you say like, "Oh man, I look so fat today," or whatever it could be that you're saying to yourself and then believing, then it becomes part of your reality. We have to remember we're created in the image of the Father, right, in heaven, who created the entire universe, galaxy, system, reality through his word, and we're created in his image. So how much power in this reality does our words have in our own lives and the lives of others? This is something that people don't really talk about. Not to say that we're gods or anything like that, because that's not what I'm trying to imply, but we are created in the image of God, who sent his son down, who could speak healing over people and speak and bring a man back to life, right? You have Lazarus, who was called out of the grave, right? Just through Jesus's words, right? Through Yeshua, right? Get up. Right? So what kind of power do we have in our own reality that we speak? And the occult recognizes this. When you see the show or like the book like The Secret, or their Name It Claim It that you see in a lot of Christian evangelical stuff, right? There is truth to this, and the occult and a lot of the secular communities and even fake religious communities, they abuse this. But there is truth and power to it because God established the reality that we live in, and we can speak blessings or curses into our own lives. And this is one of those things that, again, we have to watch what we say about ourselves. We have to speak life into not only everyone else's life, but into our own life, and not speak curses over ourselves, not say things that are going to be detrimental, not complain, not speak curses out, not look at ourselves and say, oh man, well, I wish I was 5 pounds lighter, or, I'm so fat today. Like, all of the negativity that the enemy is whispering in your ear doesn't need to come out of your mouth, because he's trying to speak that into your reality. And all he's doing is using you as the conduit. Right?
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
What do you think about, like, can you think of some of the things that we say about ourselves that is derogatory or negative that we like? I can think of a couple that like I want to cut out from saying, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Trying to think. I mean, I used to think about it a little bit more. I feel like I got a little bit better at just being aware of it, and I think sometimes that's the key, is just actually listening to the words you're saying, and asking the Father to update your vocabulary, to only house words that speak life as opposed to speaking death. There's a lot of stuff that we try to do that we just fail doing. We have to ask the Father for help, and I think that this is one of them, where if it's truly our heart's desire and truly the intent, of our heart to not speak these curses over ourselves, over our friends and family, and even over our enemies, if that's really our desire, sometimes it's going to take more than you just trying to stop saying, oh, that kills me. If that's just the one you try to take out just because that's the one you can think of, there's probably so much more. I mean, there's so many things, like even embedded in the language, like when you talk about like how do you correctly put the letters of words in order. What is that called? Spelling. Okay, spells and witchcraft. When you write your letters with flowy connecting cursive letters, what is that called? And so, like, embedded in the very language itself. And I know this is not intended to make people like, you know what, I'm just going to stop speaking English, I'll speak sign language. But at the same time, like, it's an awareness thing. And once you're aware of it, once he shows these things to you, you can ask him to be like, okay, help me update how I'm speaking. Let me speak life over the people around me. And I think that's, I mean, after being in the military for 7 years, you got to the point where you used certain 4-letter words as nouns, adjectives, verbs. Almost every single part of the English language could be substituted for one of these curses, right? Or one of these curses could be substituted in every part of the language, and I don't think that's by accident. I think that the English language is the whore of many languages. If we really look at how it's comprised and where it comes from, it's just a conglomeration of countless different languages. And so, anyways, without getting too far off the point, it's not to try and get anybody from just stop speaking the English language, because that's, once again, we're operating in the society that he put us here for a reason. He brought us up in the houses that we speak in English as our first language, and some of us have started understanding the differences that we see in the language, like Hebrew, for example. One of the more original languages that we see that was used by the nation of Israel, and there's just a whole different side to it. A very action based language. I'm not going to sit here and pontificate about how I believe in Jesus, and so that's why I have salvation. That's not what it's talking about. It's, you know, when you look at that word in the Hebrew, right? We know that it's a I'm doing because I believe, all right? I'm taking these actions because I believe. And once again, James talks about that, says your faith without works and without actions is nothing, right? It's worthless. So once again, it's another thing that just kind of ties everything back together, in my opinion. You know, and it is important, but sometimes it really goes past what we can do personally, or what we can try to will ourselves to do, will ourselves to stop speaking curses, will ourselves to stop using expletives, and will ourselves to you know, to update our vocabulary. Sometimes it really is a supernatural move of the Holy Spirit that has to update that for us. You know, our software needs a reboot and an upgrade. So I after everything that we know that the Father can do, you know, through the Holy Spirit and all this stuff, when he says you're a new creation, you don't think he has the ability to, like, you go into, you know, I don't know who uses Microsoft Office products, you know, but I mean, you can literally go in there and change the dictionary that it uses. So you can add words that constantly come up with the right squiggly line and be like, I use this word all the time, add it to dictionary, right? Guess what? You can take words out of that. You know, I don't want to use this. I want it to say, hey, there's a warning that comes up when I use this word, something that's, you know, that gives me some type of, you know, accountability that says I don't want to use that word because it's not really conveying what I'm trying to say. So, anyways, I'm tired because I get rambly, but I think the point, I think it was made. You know, I said what I need to say, but did that help at all with what you were looking for?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you hit what Gym City Freedom Fighters, or Ian Chadrick, he said earlier. He said you have to change your mind about your situation before you can change your heart.
Yeah.
I mean that's kind of one of those things. Like you said, you can go in there and change the dictionary or whatever, right? You can edit all that, but you have to make the conscious decision to want to change that word first, right? Your computer's not just going to do it for you.
Exactly.
So the final thing that I really want to touch on, and this is more for anybody who, like myself, because I was a DJ for 20 years now or whatever. I'm very associated with music and the music industry and what's popular and popular music throughout the last. I mean, I did retro music a lot of times, so I went all the way back into the 40s and 50s. But I'm very aware of lyrics in songs, and this is one of those things that I encourage everyone else to be very careful about, regardless of the music, right? I mean, this is somebody who grew up on Bone Thugs and Harmony and stuff, and I used to love rap and lyrics and all this other kind of stuff, and rock music. It was, you know, I did a lot of stuff with a local rock station here, so I have a huge. The only thing that I really didn't ever mess with was country music. It wasn't my forte, but a huge kind of a library of music in my head. And one thing that I have noticed, though, with a lot of this stuff is how inspired it is by through demonic muses, or even through fallen, like it's like this whole idea of was the guy that used to follow the knights around, and he would tell their stories, the bard, right? And he would tell the stories of the exploits of whatever. I've seen so much music that is literally telling the exploits of the fallen and the watchers, like, and their stories, and like the whole idea of a muse, right? Like the whole idea of like that is a demonic inspiration, right? And we're chanting and we're saying these songs and singing these songs and these lyrics, which have oppressive, you know, stories of, you know, demonic stories or fallen stories. But even on top of that, in different cultures of music, you have stuff that glorifies violence, glorifies, you know, prostitution, glorifies adultery, all of these things. And, you know, we're singing the lyrics to them. We're singing the lyrics to those songs. You're openly speaking those things into your life. This is why there are certain cultures that are tied to certain music genres have the same consistent problems, right? You know, you look at goth communities and they're very depressed. You look at, and it's kind of a chicken or egg scenario, but either way, it still works, right?
Sure.
The people who have the issues are drawn to that style of music, you know, and then it replicates those issues inside of their life because they're speaking the lyrics out of their mouth. So that's one thing to really be careful of, is the type of music and lyrics and stuff. And there's a couple of songs. There's actually two that go along with this topic, right? One of them is, what is his name from, was it DC Talk? Toby Mac, right? Toby Mac has a song called Speak Life, and it's a really good song. It's one of my favorites on my playlist. And then kind of an odd one that I don't think most people know of is Damian Marley, which is, I think it's Bob Marley's nephew or something like that. But he has a song called Speak Life. And I just wanted to read the lyrics real quick. Because this is one of my favorite songs. I love this song. But I would say everybody go listen to it or whatever. And it's so funny, especially in the Torah observant community, because like seeing like this video for it, like he's got dreadlocks, he's wearing a prayer shawl and all this other kind of stuff. Like I was just really taken back by the Jamaican and Rastafarian, like their cultures or whatever, because they're you know, we say Yah, right, and they say Jah, and there's this whole thing with it. But they have some really cool things. But I really like this song. So the lyrics for it go like this: I pray thee, once again. I wonder if you're surrounded by ones of such talent. You know, speak life is the chorus for it. Live a humble and meek life, ordinary day of the week life. Try to search and seek life. Way up, keep your head up and stay up, even when you're sore and pain, love. Never give up till it's game up. Keep your aim up and focus. Don't concentrate on what's bogus. Never sell out for a bonus. Handle your biz like grown-ups. Own up. It's amazing the way Yah's fire keeps blazing. That's why I constantly praise him. For some of them, it's a phase thing, so they're gazing. On the street lights, tell them go catch up or caught up in street fights, 'cause they're pretending they're streetwise and put an end to a brief life. I feel like it's a mystery how we keep repeating our history, making the same mistakes as our ancestry. Seems like all the lessons missed seems like all of life's lessons missed. It's risky. So give praises. One day you'll find your oasis. Rise up to the challenge you're faced with. Be hopeful and creative. You'll make it. It's basic. People been doing it for ages in many other cultures and places on a regular basis. There's so many cases. Let's face it. Way too much time has been wasted building military bases, fighting a war with no basis. Life is sacred. On every bear, people, every bear, and every baby people, what is it? Every bear, people naked. Some of them, it's in like slang. So some of them gonna risk big. They don't care what they're making. They can't make it. So speak life. All this darkness don't feel right. So I totally didn't do it justice. It's a beautiful song, but I love that song because it just reminds me when I hear this, like, to speak life. So just have to check this out, or check that song out. So other than that, we got like 10 minutes left, man. I kind of wanted to reach out to the people in the chat and ask like kind of what they thought about this. What are some of the other things we can talk about, we can add and contribute to this, like things that we speak and who we speak to. Does anybody have any comments they want to throw in here so that we can talk about it? We'll jump to the chat and see what anybody posts in there. But yeah, I don't know, man. It's definitely it's a learning thing, and it's like a rewriting your mind kind of thing. Like when you approach this topic and realize, if you're not aware, and then to be aware of this and then listen to yourself talk, you know, and just be aware of what you're saying, it just opens your eyes like throughout the day. And some people, man, like my dad used to call it diarrhea of the mouth. I used to have a friend of mine that he just, whatever came into his head came out of his mouth. It didn't matter if it was good, bad, whatever. He would tell on himself, do whatever. It's just like, you know, it just could not stop his mouth from going. And, you know, that just, I mean, that can't be good. You know, just they have no filter whatsoever. And I know that there are a lot of people that are out there that are like that just, whatever the voices in your head tell you to say, you say. And I just can't imagine that's a healthy lifestyle or a comfortable person to want to be around. And I think about that, about some of the people that I see their social media comments and stuff like that. I'm like, I wonder how uncomfortable it is to be around this person. Like, they're so angry in their posts and so, so many complaints and so many whatever. It's like, can you imagine, like, actually hanging out with this person? Like, I wouldn't want to be friends with this person,
Yeah. There was a guy from Harvard. He was a Harvard grad. He used to say using foul language was a sign of a weak mind and an even weaker character. And there was something that kind of stuck out about that. To me, it's just like there's so many more words that actually speak life than ones that like speak death and curses over someone. It just sometimes it takes more time. Like, the easy way out is speaking death. You know what I'm saying? Like, just because, kind of going back to what I was saying earlier with how often I used certain language when I was in the military. It's just because it's like I can use one word for the entire sentence. Almost 2 words. And so it was just interesting because he wasn't coming from a biblical perspective at all. He wasn't coming from a faith-based perspective. He was coming from more of an intellectual mindset that shows that sometimes we have to take control of our mind and be bigger than what, like you said, the voices inside our head are telling us to say. So I just thought that was interesting. Yeah. Was there anything in the chat? My computer's acting up crazy, so I had to shut down the stream on my end.
I didn't get to look at anything yet, but yeah, if you guys want to add anything, make sure you guys put it in the live chat so we can speak your comments here. Yeah, and I don't want to harp on anybody about, like, curse, like using foul 4-letter words, because I still do it, right? It's not, I don't view a person who uses a just an expletive, right? We'll just put it that way. Like when they stub their toe or they're really into something and they're, like it just slips out or whatever. I'm not saying anything against that. I think to concentrate on that over concentrating on the intent behind words that are spoken or the actual curses that we speak on each other. Like, we call them curse words, right? Like, but it's not actually the cursing, the part that's the problem. It's like that whole thing, like where people say, well, don't use God's name in vain. And then they apply it to this, like actually using God's name, like, saying a bad word. And when it actually is like meaning that you're carrying a standard that you're not representing, like we kind of apply and focus on the wrong things. Like I would take a cussing preacher over somebody who speaks curses on somebody else. You know what I'm saying? Just throwing them out there. You know what I mean? Like with no, they don't have that filter and they're just saying whatever comes to their mind, and then they're gossiping and they're lying and they're doing all these kind of things. I'll take a cussing preacher all day. You know what I'm saying? Over somebody that allows their mouth to be so, open and, so vile, right? Because that's the true vile nature is in the intent behind it versus the words that are coming out of it. But, that can be evidence too of not being able to hold your tongue, though. You know what I'm saying? So, that may be a sign, like, because it does matter, because we don't want to cause somebody else to slip up or to be a bad representation of the kingdom of heaven, right? So again, you don't want to be out there saying vile jokes or whatever and then want to talk to somebody about Christ and discipleship. But I'm not going to say, if you stub your toe and you drop, a 4-letter word, that you're not representing Christ. You know what I'm saying? We're human. That happens. I would be more concerned when talking about curse words, about saying things that actually are speaking death and sickness and illness and pain and suffering into your life and the lives of others than I am about a 4-letter word. I'll just put it that way.
Sure.
Let's see. In the chat here, see real quick. Roger says, to see the thought from your mouth move from your mouth to mind will manifest into reality. If you believe it, it will happen. If you believe you will be sick, you will become sick. Yeah, and there's actually evidence that proves that believing and belief is a whole nother topic, because that completely goes hand in hand with the intent behind these curses, right? So, but there are people that can actually will themselves through the belief and what they say into being sick or into being healed or whatever. There's a faith, belief, and our tongue are almost intertwined, and how all these things are attached together and how they work in our reality.
Sure.
White Rabbit Warrior said, I only might curse if I stub my toe, then I say I'm sorry. Yeah. Let's see, Catherine Hood says, yes, we need more life flowing through us. We need more study of the Father's Word. Absolutely. Tracy Jones says, we must be careful how we talk to the deceived church. We must be patient, kind, knowing that they are seeking Yahweh, but we must speak to them. Absolutely. Yeah, I completely agree with that. I think cutting ourselves off from brothers and sisters because of disagreements or because of pride or because of a plethora of other things that we were talking about on social media and all of that, like cutting ourselves off from those people because you feel like you're above them or they need to catch up, is not how the Bible tells us we're supposed to interact. As brothers and sisters, we hold hands on the same level across the board. Some of us may know more, some of us may have more love, some of us have more patience. The gifts are not you get a full cup of this and a full cup of this, and this is how it goes. Sometimes, you get a little bit and then you get a full thing of something else. Our gifts and the way things are in our walk are always different, but we can't use that or let the enemy use that as a divisionary tool to separate us and to cause division. Because what does the world want to come? The world's already full of division and they're trying to unify. And again, they'll unify before we ever do. But the world is already full of division and anger and hypocrisy. What would we convince anybody to come from the world to join us when we look just like the world? So we got to stop doing that. We have to look set apart. If anybody is going, we're called to make the Jews jealous of their relationship with the Father, right? How are we going to do that when we're just as divisive and infighting and can't be on the same level and show brotherly love to other believers? We can't do that. We look like hypocrites when we say we should do something, but then we don't do it. And social media is a giant flagship for that, when you can see it all day long. Just jump into any random Christian, group or channel or anything like that, and you're going to find infighting. You're going to find people who are sent there to stir up things, and you're going to see people calling each other names and all that kind of stuff. That's not appropriate for us. It does not look like Christ.
Sure.
Let's see. Yes, iron sharpening iron. Let's see. Yeah. Janet says, yes, iron sharpening iron can seem abrasive. Yes, but it has a purpose, right? To sharpen it. Right. It'll throw sparks. It does cause friction. It causes heat. But if it's not tempered correctly, you will break things, right? So we need to do things the proper way.
It makes it more brittle than it was at the beginning anyways. It won't be able to hold an edge. Just if anyone's never sharpened a knife before, there's a lot of things you can learn about the actual physical sharpening of a knife to understand how that applies to what the word is saying in that verse about iron sharpening iron. Like there's some really good lessons there. So
yeah, well, I might have to dig into that deeper sometime. But yeah, I think this has been a good talk, and this is just something that was on my heart. This was I wanted to do a compilation, right, of kind of a lot of the things that we've talked about over the years and put it into an entire video, so
sure
that it means something and somebody can actually get through this, and then we hit all of these topics continuously. So, I appreciate the chat, you guys jumping in and being a part of this and having the conversation going on there. And Daniel, I appreciate your input. I know you struggled through getting through the night. And guys, the only thing I can say is keep us in prayer. I don't necessarily feel like it was a tax. I just, I think that we're going both, Daniel's family and myself, are going through, some transitions, and we're trying to do everything that we're doing and then do the show and stuff. It makes it really hard. And, of course the enemy doesn't want us to do the show ever. So, they likes to throw stuff in our way. So guys, keep us in prayer, and, keep us in your thoughts, and lifting us up before the Father, because, the enemy does not want truth out there, and always wants to, put pitfalls in our path. And we're trying to do the best we can to maintain our family and our households first, before we can, approach you guys and try to talk about everything we're going through. But the example that we can do is to continue on regardless of the circumstances, and praise God every step of the way through. So that's what I try to do. And I know that's what Daniel does too. So, anything you want to add?
No, I think we covered quite a bit of it that I wanted to talk about. So definitely appreciate it, and enjoy you covering. I appreciated your thoughts on a lot of the stuff tonight. Definitely was a good perspective, for not just myself, but I think all of us. There's a lot to be, gleaned from just the stuff we talked about tonight, how we can take some of this stuff and put it into practical application in our lives.
Yeah, absolutely. And guys, trying to think if there's anything else that I wanted. So we talked about Take on the World. They're going to do a virtual conference. There was something that was approached to me. I don't know where it's at right now, but it was from Chad Schaefer. There was, he's got some of the programs that a lot of people are using, the StreamYard, and he's upgraded that. And I think the last time Chris and Liz had paid for that for the channel for us to use. I don't use it, but we are going to try to put something together, or maybe even do a 24-hour stream where we do a fundraiser to pay for that for the year. Because it's a good chunk of change, and for anybody, $400 or $500 out of your pocket in a month is, it's quite a bit of money. So we don't want to put that on Chris and Liz or on Chad Schaefer. So we want to across the board kind of help, because as more people are coming in, we have that tool available for people when they approach us and they want to do a show on the channel. They already have the tools that they can jump on and start doing it, and so we want to keep that going. So I don't know if Chad has moved forward with that, but we're going to try to set something up where we either do a 24-hour stream and try to do a little fundraiser thing for it, or if they're just going to open that up and it's going to go to, I think Chris and Liz's, their account or whatever through Venmo or whatever. So we're going to work on that. So stay tuned for that. Cause if you really want to help out the channel, that's something that, funds are going to go directly to paying for that, so that it doesn't have to come out of somebody's pocket. With, everything we do here on this channel, this is already, we pay for out of pocket, out of our own stuff. So, or at least not channel, out of this show, because we're on Take on the World TV. But it's a very complicated process. If you guys see, you could see my desk, it looks like the Matrix right now, like, inside the Nebuchadnezzar or whatever. So yeah. And you guys, if you ever want to support this channel too, as well, there's links, and I'll actually put in the donate thing. I don't pander for the channel, but if you guys feel led, the donation thing is on there. You can always jump over to our, SITREPresistance.com, and there's a donate thing there, as well as a lot of other resources that we have available. And if I had more time, I would be updating that. But everything is so tight right now. But yeah, other than that, check out the Facebook page for the fellowship if you guys are still on Facebook. As some of these new social media pages are coming out, we'll try to keep on board with those. We're still waiting on Lighthouse. I heard Truth is coming out, which I don't know too much about. I just saw somebody was making a post. There's like 1 million people waiting for Truth to come out, some other social media thing. So as those are opening up, we'll move over to those. And if it's not going to be a waste of time, I'm not going to build a whole page and a whole bunch of advertisements and get everybody over there if there's only going to be 4 people that go to that social media site. So
right.
But yeah, other than that, guys, I don't like, share, subscribe, get this stuff out there for anybody that you think needs hearing it. And I don't know, we'll see you guys next week as far as we know. So we love you guys, and may Yah bless and keep you, and we'll talk to you guys next week.
Shalom.